Today I'd like to do a video that features the survival cheat sheet. This is a project that I first started around 4 years ago, and I finally got around to finishing it. And for this particular project, I asked you, the audience, on what kind of information that you would want to have on a double-sided sheet of paper to be able to be leveraged in a survival situation, such as a bug-out scenario. Similar to what you would do in the classroom setting. For example, if you were taking a calculus class, oftentimes when you're taking the test, they allow you to have a sheet of paper with some various notes on there to help you take that test and succeed. So it would have a list of formulas and things like that that you could leverage. If you didn't know anything about calculus, the cheat sheet would do you no good. But if you did know something about calculus and you could leverage the formulas on that cheat sheet, it would allow you to pass the test. And I thought it would be a good concept to be able to be leveraged in a survival situation. So I asked you, the audience, on what kind of information that you would want to have on a double-sided sheet of paper to be able to be leveraged in an emergency situation. And I finally got around to finishing the first version of it. So for this video, I'd like to go through all the items that are covered in the survival cheat sheet. Let's get started. This survival cheat sheet is largely a community-based project that was developed in the comment section of that original video. So I went through all of the comments of that video and extracted the ones that were the most agreed upon by the audience. For example, they had the most thumbs up, and I wanted to make sure that those were all included in this document. And I had to organize those based off of the different preparedness categories that I like covering. For example, food, water, shelter, first aid, fire, comms, and so on. And as always, I've color coordinated them based off of the color of prepping concept as well. And originally I wanted to go with an 8.5 by 11 letter sheet of paper, but I had to go with a legal sheet of paper, which is 8.5 by 14, to allow me to have a little bit additional information that I didn't want to have omitted in this document. And I also had to scale it back a little bit as far as there's a lot of different variations between urban and rural survival, and I wanted to have it be something that could be universal, that could be downloaded from anywhere and be able to be leveraged. So for example, in the food section, there's a lot of different options that you could cover for food based off of the edible plants that are available in that area, based off the type of animals that are in that area. And so I had to kind of tone it down a little bit to make sure that it was more universal instead of dedicated to a specific region. So this document should be fairly universal, that anyone, whether you're in the UK or in the United States or in Brazil or you name it, you could download this document and it would be useful for you in a survival situation. Normally I make my own PDF documents, but for this one it was such a vast project that I had to hire a graphic designer to put it all together. So I provided all the content, and the graphic designer put all the organization and the different sections together, and then also resketched all of the images that you see here. So they're all based off of various images from the web, and just made them a little bit more custom for this particular document so it all looked pretty cohesive. So I'm going to put his information in the description box below. I also have various content that is in here that's sourced. So for example, on this section here with regard to water in an emergency situation, I have it sourced by CDC Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And you'll see that throughout this document. Here's another one for CPR instructions sourced by the Red Cross, and so on and so forth. So you'll see a lot of that in this document. If it was something that was largely based upon content that was already available, I want to make sure that they got a shout out for that. Let's start going through all the various sections of the survival cheat sheet now. Again, you could download it by clicking the link in the description box below. It's a free download. Just download it. It's around a 20 meg file, and then you're just going to send it over to your local print store like a Kinko's and have them print it in a legal format. So not letter, not 8.5 by 11, but 8.5 by 14, full color, front and back. And then I would also recommend having it laminated so it's protected from water. It's a little bit more durable, and then you could just slip it in the back of your bug out bag to have for emergency purposes. So let's start going through all the various sections now, starting off with food. So for the food section, I had to scale it back a little bit to make sure that it wasn't region specific. So I just went with general best practices. The first part is for edible and poisonous wild plants, on general practices for that. Also with wild fruits and berries, on how you could check to see if they're edible. And then I also have information here with regard to snares and traps. So like a figure 4, dead drop, and also various snares. In the water section, we have various information from the Center for Disease Control on possible sources of water in an emergency situation, for example, inside of your home and outside of your home. I also have information here on how to make homemade chlorine bleach using pool shock, so the correct ratio for that. There's also a table here for disinfecting water using household bleach. So again, the ratio for bleach to water, for example, 2 drops of bleach for 1 quart of water. We also have it for 2 gallons, 4 gallons, and so on. There's also some different options here for filtering and purifying water. So how to make a filter using a 2-liter bottle of soda, empty bottle, also how to make salt water into fresh water or clean drinking water, and also how to make a solar still. In the shelter section, I have a bunch of different graphics of primitive shelter options that could be used in a survival situation. The first aid section is another one that had to be scaled back a lot because there's so much information that you can include in this type of section. So I just went with the basics. So with CPR instructions for basic first aid procedures for various things that could happen, for example, fractures, burns. I also went with some various medicinal plants that could be used in a survival situation, and then also information on antibiotics. In the fire section, I have various graphics to show the different types of fire-making methods that could be used in a primitive survival situation. I also included a small section of inspirational quotes that could be used for motivation and morale purposes during a survival situation. That's something that I like reading often, is famous quotes by famous people to help keep the spirits going and help give me motivation. And I thought that could be leveraged in a survival situation as well. In the tools and tactical section, I basically came down with just various knots that could be leveraged, and then also instructions on how to pick a lock. This one's sourced by a website. And at the very bottom of the page, I have a ruler that's an imperial, so in inches, that could be used for map reading or for other various tasks. The back page of the survival cheat sheet is dedicated to comms, navigation, and conversions. Starting off first at the top left, I have various ways of finding north without a compass, by using a sundial, for example, and also using the stars. And for the stars, I have it broken down to the different hemispheres of the Earth. So we have northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, and then also from the equator. There are 3 conversion tables included, one for weight, another for volume, and then a third one for length conversions. To go along with that length conversions table, I also have a few additional tables for steps to distance conversions. So how many steps does it take to reach a mile or a kilometer? How many steps does it take to reach 5 miles? This might be beneficial in a bug out scenario where you might be wanting to pace yourself. And then I have an additional set of tables for step distance to miles and kilometers based off of your step length. So if you have a shorter step length, it's going to take more steps to reach that mile. If you have a longer one, it's going to be less steps. And it does it in both imperial and metric. I also have several tables here related to comm. So I have comm and ham radio repeaters, channel spacings, and offsets. We also have a NATO phonetic alphabet that shows Morse code, and then how you do the pronunciation of Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and so forth. We also have common ham radio Q signals, for example, QRM, a QRX, which means standby, a QSO, abbreviation for contact, and so on and so forth. We also have NOAA frequencies, so the weather bands, what the alert channel is, the frequency of the marine channel, and I also have a section here for Morse code abbreviations. For example, what does AB mean? What is B4? What is CX? What is GG? GG means going. What is NIL? That's nothing. What is SKED? That's schedule, and so on and so forth. So there's a large table for that as well. I also have a section for military 10 codes. A lot of people are familiar with 10-4, which means acknowledgement or okay, but there's a lot of different military 10 codes. For example, there's a 1020, which is location. There's a 1087, which is pick and distribute checks. There's a 1083, work, school, crossing. There's a 1081, breathalyzer. There's a 1080, that's a chase in progress, and so on and so forth. And I also have a section for search and rescue X codes, also known as Katrina X codes. And that's what task forces use when they're examining a building. For example, during Hurricane Katrina, they would use spray paint on the outside of the door, for example, of a building, and they would label the date that it was inspected, the task force identifier, what kind of personal hazards there were in there, how many people were alive and dead or victims that were still inside, and it has a description of how you could read those Katrina X codes. At the very bottom, I have a table for ground air visual guide on how you could signal whether you need a doctor, you need medical supplies, you need food and water, you require fuel and oil. It has all of those listings there. And then at the very bottom, I also have another ruler here. This one's in metric for centimeters that could be used for map reading. There's some different other topics that I was hoping to include in here. For example, the hobo signs that I had in a previous video. So I just had to print off an additional copy of that, also laminated, and I'm just going to include it with the survival cheat sheet. So the hobo signs was another fun one. I'll put a link at the end of this video that you can check out for that as well. So instead of including that in the survival cheat sheet, I just made sure to include that PDF document. You could download that in the description box as well. That's going to do it for this video featuring the Survival Cheat Sheet version 1. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching it. It was a lot of fun to put together. Again, you could download this particular document by clicking the link in the description box below. It'll send you to the PDF file. It's a 20 meg file. Just download it and then send it to your local print store to print. And make sure that you do it in legal paper size, color, front and back. And then I would also recommend having it laminated so you could throw it in the back of your bug out bag, for example, maybe where your water bladder's at, and to be able to be used in a survival situation. Special shout out to the graphic designer Travis who put this all together for me. I sent him a lot of information and he was able to squeeze it all in as small as a font as possible for this, and then also redraw all of the graphics that I sent for him as well. So again, thank you Travis for putting this together. I could see this being a fun follow-up project with multiple iterations, version 2, version 3. You could also break it up into rural versus urban, and then also deep dive into various categories for prepping. So for example, you could have a whole cheat sheet just on first aid. You could have a whole one just on comms, for example, and that would be kind of fun to do with various experts in those fields. So leave your comments below in the comments section regarding this whole concept. What are some other information that you would like to see included in this type of document? And maybe we'll follow up with that in a future video. So again, thanks for watching this video featuring the Survival Cheat Sheet, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.